Hello, everybody. It's me again. You'll be astonished to hear. And today I'm going to talk about white silence. I think some of you will have read the article that I wrote about just one damn thing after another and how all the ideas came blitzing into my brain. White silence wasn't quite like that. Um, it bubbled around in my mind for ages. Originally, the main character, who didn't have a name at that stage, was supposed to be a woman who was running away from something. And at that stage, obviously, I had no idea who she was, what she was running away from, or why. And nothing continued to happen with this book for quite some time because obviously I was suffering St Mary's fever. And then one day I asked myself the very useful question, was she running from or was she running to? Because the answers can be different. Um, just digressing for a moment, because I do that. I have a question I ask myself when struggling to make a personal decision. I always say to myself, what do I want to do? And then I ask myself, what should I do? The two answers are never the same. And the contrast between them is sometimes quite interesting. Um, but anyway, back to Elizabeth Cage. I had a thought, what if the thing that she was running from was herself? What if she was the problem? And what if she didn't know she was the problem? And this put things into a completely different perspective for me, actually, because suddenly she was a much stronger character. In fact, I thought, what if she was actually the strongest person in the book? And initially, no one was aware of that, although Dr. Sorensen, as you know, had his suspicions. Maybe even she didn't know what was going on. Um, I'd already written Max, and I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but Max can be a little bit gung ho at times. And I wanted a different character. These days, women are expected to be ninjas. We're supposed to be rocket scientists and explorers and business women and leaders and warriors and God knows what else, which is fine as long as it's our choice. But, and here I'm setting financial constraints aside, what about the women who like housework? What about women who just want to stay at home and play with their children? Sometimes I think we've just swapped one set of restrictions for another. But anyway, that's just me. I wanted a heroine whose lifestyle would be a massive contrast to the dangers that were for her always present. Um, she couldn't even go to the shops without encountering a monstrous woman who meant her harm. I wanted a main character whose response to the horrors around her were not to open fire, but to shampoo the carpet, do the ironing, or tidy her kitchen cupboards. She found a refuge in the mundane and the familiar and the safe. A critic in a review described her as a 1950s housewife, and I don't think he meant it in a good way. But I was pretty chuffed actually, because that was exactly what I was going for. Michael Jones turned up a little bit later. Initially, he was just supposed to be the foil to Elizabeth Cage. He represented the real world and its tangible threats. But as usual, the character took over, and now he's quite an important part of the story and of her life as well. I can't remember where the idea for Elizabeth Cage seeing people in terms of colour came from. Again, not a light bulb moment, I'm afraid, more a steady development of ideas. It occurred to me that colours could be a kind of shorthand for describing people and their moods and their emotions. I was vaguely aware of the existence of auras, and obviously, I did a lot of reading up on the subject, and it is very intriguing. So much so that I actually went off and had my aura read. No, I'm not telling you what color I am. You just have to guess. Um, I'd like to turn to Bad Moon just for a quick moment, if I can. This was a great story to write. I had a marvelous time. I really hope I've managed to convey both terror and humour, often simultaneously. And I laughed all the way through the ending. Poor Sergeant Bates, she's such a conscientious police officer, and she's done nothing at all to deserve what she discovers in Elizabeth Cage's cellar. And there's also a very intriguing new character that I've introduced. I should be interested to hear what you make of that particular character. Um, I'm not saying any more. I shall now read the prologue of White Silence, in which Elizabeth Cage sets out her stall and describes what sets the tone for the entire book, really, if you're ready. People say silence is golden. They're wrong. Silence is white, white and deadly. My name is Elizabeth Cage. I'm a widow. My husband, Ted, died suddenly. They took me after the funeral. It was quick and it was quiet. No one knew where I was. There wasn't a soul in the world who knew what was happening to me. There was no one I could call on for help. I knew what they wanted, but they haven't got it yet, and they never will. There's more to me than meets the eye. I haven't spent years cultivating the dowdy housewife appearance for nothing. To look at me, I'm a drab, insignificant, anxious 20-something housewife with unfashionable hair and no makeup. Unfortunately, my appearance is the only thing I can tell you about me because I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. Give me 10 minutes with a total stranger, and I can tell you things about them they don't even know themselves. I can look at someone and I know. It's not voices in my head or visions or anything like that, but I know. I know when you're lying. I know when you're frightened. I know when you're bluffing. You don't have to say a word, but you're telling me just the same. Everyone has one. Some people call it an aura. Before I'd ever heard the term, when I was a child, I called it their colour. Everyone has one, a shimmering, shifting web of colours constantly weaving itself around them, changing from moment to moment to reflect their emotions. They're all different. Some people's colour has a defined shape, thick and even. Some colours are rich and strong and vibrant. Others are pale and insubstantial. Sometimes, and I hate this, there's an ominous dark patch over their head or their heart, and I know that's never good. Sometimes friends or family members have similar colours, colours that are related in the spectrum. You may have noticed there are those for whom you feel a natural affinity. That will be because your colours are similar. Some people repulse you and you never know why, but it's usually because your colours won't merge. When I was a child, there were three dustmen. One man, the noisy one, was a deep royal blue. The older one was turquoise, and the young one a soft green. They came every Thursday morning. They ran up and down the street, shedding rubbish and shouting insults in equal measure, and yet their colours reached out towards each other, blending softly. I used to stand at the windows, watching their colours swirl about them, a thing of wonder to a small girl. Sometimes I can see the same thing with a mother and child, that gentle merging of colours as one shades into another. But with good comes bad. I think I was about 12 years old. I was in the high street in Rushford. The paper boy had missed us again, and my father had sent me to pick one up. I stepped out of the newsagent's with his paper wedged under one arm while I carefully peeled the wrapper off my ice cream. The sun went in. That's the only way I can describe it. The day grew dark and cold. The sounds of people and of traffic became distorted and ugly. I looked up. Everything looked completely normal. I stared up and down the street. Cars passed backwards and forwards. People scurried about in and out of the shops. But there was something. I knew there was something. I stood stock still on the pavement, the stream of pedestrians parting around me. And there it was, a woman. She strolled serenely towards me. There was nothing unusual in her appearance. On the contrary, she was well dressed and made up, and her white blonde hair was beautiful. I felt my heart stop with fear, and the thing that lives in my head said, "Hide." People are blind. They never see what's really there. She walked slowly, and I could see that although no one seemed to notice her, no one touched her, no one made eye contact, no one got in her way. They might not know why they were doing it. They might not even be aware they were doing it at all, but everyone was giving her a wide berth. I stood rooted to the spot, terrified, terrified of what was approaching, and doubly so because no one seemed able to see it but me. Yes, she had a colour, but it was the energy emanating from her that frightened me. Most people's colours swirl a little bit, especially if they're emotional at the time, but this one, it was as if she was encased in a thick black grease. I saw oily colours that made me feel sick. But the worst part was the movement. Her colour didn't swirl, it spiked, like a conker case. I'd never seen anything like it before, and the spikes moved, stabbing in and out, fast and vicious, never stopping, in and out. Some of them extended a good 18 inches from her body. I was only 12. I had no idea if the spikes constituted defense or attack, but I do know that as I saw her, she became aware of me. My ice cream fell to the ground unheeded. It was suddenly very, very important that she shouldn't see me or even know I was here. I slipped behind an advertising hoarding, easing my way around as she drew nearer, and when she was level with me, she stopped. I stopped too and held my breath. She looked down at the ice cream splattered across the pavement, and then she lifted her head, turning from side to side. I just knew that she was seeking me out. The two of us stood motionless while everyone else, for whom this was just a normal day, streamed past us, intent on their Saturday morning business. I still wasn't breathing. I knew with certainty that to make even the slightest sound, the smallest movement, would be a very, very bad thing. For me, anyway. My chest and head were pounding, and the pavement swam beneath me. And then, finally, she lifted her head on that graceful neck and began to walk away. I edged my way around the hoarding, watching her disappear into the crowd. She was so tall that her blonde head was easily visible. I watched her until I couldn't see her any longer, and then I turned and ran as hard as I could in the opposite direction. I was only a child. I thought all monsters were ugly. That's why they were called monsters. That was the day I discovered I was wrong. I don't know who she was or what she was. I'm sorry, there's no neat ending to that story, but I never saw her again. It was, however, the first time I realized that as well as beauty, there was ugliness in this world, evil as well as good. And there were things out there that, for some reason, only I could see, and they could see me.